Hey everyone, welcome to part 3 of Nichole Schmidt's deposition. In the last episode, we covered the Moab incident. This episode is going to be when the Laundries are ignoring the Petitos and they released a statement via Bertolino, that whole mess. So enjoy this episode. Thank you for watching, and much thanks to Petito for reading through this whole deposition with me. On 9/11, I walked into Pachogue, and you spelled that earlier.
You're going to have to spell it again.
Patchogue.
Where is that?
It's in New York.
Okay.
So on Long Island. And I walked into the 5th precinct, and Detective Tracy Berry, her name was, she spoke to me for a good hour and decided that she asked me for Roberta's number, and she tried to call and there was no answer. So she said, I'll take the report, and we did.
When you spoke, and how do you spell Barry? Do you know?
I believe it's Barry.
When you spoke to Detective Barry, did you tell Detective Barry about what had happened in Moab?
I didn't. I don't remember.
What do you remember about your conversation with Detective Barry?
I walked into the precinct with my friend Jackie, and we were basically speaking to the girl at the front desk first, the officer taking the information. And she said, okay, let me get the detective. The detective came out, and I just explained to her that I haven't heard from my daughter or seen any social media posts for a while, and I can't get a hold of anybody. And we can't report her missing because nobody will take the report. And I was just frustrated and upset. I don't remember if I told her at that time about the incident in Moab. I think I was just at that time looking for her. I just wanted to know where she was.
This may sound like a weird question. I just don't know any other way to ask it. Were you looking for her and Brian? And by that I mean, were you concerned that both of them were missing?
Yes.
Or were you looking really just for Gabby?
Okay. I was looking for Gabby, but I was also concerned about both of them because I hadn't heard from either one. I texted Roberta's phone saying, have you heard from the kids? I'm worried about them.
And did you not get a response from Roberta?
No.
Did some amount of time pass where you started thinking to yourself, I haven't heard back from Roberta. That's concerning.
Yes.
When did that thought first enter your mind?
That day I texted her. I said, this is weird. She's not concerned about the kids.
Did Detective Barry, and you mentioned Detective Barry tried to call Roberta Laundrie while you were still sitting there?
Yes.
I presume you gave her her number?
Yes.
Did you also give her the address for the Laundrie parents?
I don't remember. I might have. It might have been in the report too.
Did Detective Barry tell you what she was going to do with this information that you gave her?
She said she was going to call Northport and try to get some information. And even though it didn't happen in New York, she was going to do what she could.
Did she explain what that could be?
I don't remember.
Did Detective Barry tell you that if she didn't hear back from the Laundries, she would either herself or have someone go to their house?
Yes, I believe she said she'll call Northport and give them the information and see if they'll go do a check. I don't know if it was a well check or what, but just some kind of check.
At that point in time, were the Laundries living in Northport?
Yes.
Did Detective Barry give you contact information from anyone she was interacting with at Northport?
I don't think so.
Did Detective Barry at the initial meeting talk about getting any other law enforcement agencies involved whether it was state or federal?
I don't believe at the first meeting, no.
Did you have any understanding at this first meeting? And this is September 11th.
Yes.
What the time frame was for something next to happen? In other words, was Detective Barry going to reach out right away? Was Northport going to go by the Laundrie house that same day?
I had no idea.
Do you contact Joe to tell him about your meeting with Detective Barry?
Yes.
To your knowledge, at that time, had Joe similarly reached out to any law enforcement agencies?
Yes. He called Northport a few times. I think he started calling at Moab and called around out west. The same thing I was doing.
Now, at the time you meet with Detective Barry, as best you were kind of understanding the situation, had there been any publicity or public interest at all yet?
No.
When did that start?
So Detective Barry came to my door that night on the 11th.
In Blue Point?
Yes. It was, I believe, around 10:30, almost 11 o'clock at night. And I have dogs, so I had to walk outside and talk to her on the porch. And she was there with another detective. I don't know his name. And they explained to me that she called Northport. They went to the house and that the van was there and Brian was supposedly home. And that they handed him a card and said that they had an attorney. And that was all the information they had, but that they could take the van.
Did you ask Detective Barry if she had tried to speak with the Laundries about what had happened?
I didn't ask her that specifically, no.
Did she volunteer that to you?
No, it was just the earlier phone call and she didn't get an answer. I don't know anything else.
Okay. But when I'm sorry, I understand
That's okay.
why you answered the question that way. Did Detective Barry tell you that the Northport police
Okay.
had tried to speak with the Laundrie parents?
Yes.
And what did she say was the result of that conversation?
That they handed them a card and said, "This is our attorney."
Did Detective Barry offer you her thoughts or comments on that response from the Laundrie parents?
No.
Did you ask a question like, is that normal?
I started to freak out and I said, "Well, where is my daughter?"
And again, please take whatever time you need.
She had a look on her face.
Detective Barry?
Yes. A look of
A look of
Oop.
a look of there was
She knew something's wrong, yeah, but she said, I think she mentioned that the FBI would probably get involved that night. I think she said because it's so many states.
Did Detective Barry tell you that she would reach out to the FBI?
I don't remember.
However she worded it, your understanding was the FBI was likely going to get involved at some point.
Yes.
And did you understand the FBI was likely to get involved at some point to investigate whether there was some criminal activity involved?
I'm assuming, yeah.
Did Detective Barry give you the information that was on the card for the attorney that the Laundries had given to Northport?
No.
Detective Barry, describing what had happened between the Northport police and the Laundrie parents, it you that the Laundrie parents were unwilling to talk about anything.
She didn't say those words. She just said if they needed information to contact their attorney.
Did Detective Barry tell you whether she was going to contact the attorney?
No.
Did you ask Detective Barry for the name of the Laundrie parents' attorney?
No.
Do you remember what time of night that was that the conversation occurred?
Somewhere between 10:30 and 11 p.m.
Would it be fair, Miss Schmidt, that whatever worry had been building over this period of time, when you found out that the Northport police had reached out to the Laundrie parents and the Laundrie parents refused to say anything, did that escalate your concern over what may have happened with Gabby?
Yes.
Why was that?
Because I'm her mom, and I felt like something bad had to have happened for him to be at home without her.
Was it as basic as, if the Laundrie parents had something positive to say, I'm sure we would hear it? So the fact that they're refusing to talk can't be good.
I felt concerned that they were being quiet, yes.
When you found out that North Point thought Brian was home, did you try to call or reach out to Brian directly again?
I don't think so.
When you found out
It's Northport.
Northport.
Yes. Northport, not Point.
Oh, I keep saying Point. I'm so sorry. When you found out from Northport Police through Detective Barry that they thought Brian was home, did you attempt to reach out to Roberta or Chris Laundrie at that time?
No.
What was the interaction with law enforcement after that evening visit from Detective Barry?
God, I don't remember. So I was obviously on my computer all night making flyers and sending them out to Facebook, blasting. And, at that point, it was just Gabby because I knew Brian was home safe. I don't remember when the FBI contacted me. I don't remember if it was that late. That I think it was the next night. I think it was the 12th into the 13th. Because I remember it was like 3 a.m. I heard from an FBI agent. So they actually called me at 3 a.m. So I can't remember what date, but
do you remember who it was?
I don't remember his name, but he was from New York City. But only a couple of days later, it was transferred out to the Long Island office.
Who was your FBI liaison at the Long Island?
Brian Gee.
Gee.
Yes.
Did the FBI explain why they were calling you at 3 a.m?
Yes. They said they were taking over the investigation.
Did they describe what the investigation was? Or who was being investigated?
No. I mean, they just asked a lot of questions about Gabby and her whereabouts, and kind of the similar questions you're asking today.
Did the FBI at that time, the 3 a.m. call, tell you whether or not they had attempted to reach out to Brian's parents?
I don't remember.
During the 3 a.m. phone call, did the FBI tell you that their plan was to reach out to Brian's parents?
I don't remember.
Okay. During that, we're going to have a repeat here.
That's okay.
No worries. During the 3 a.m. phone call with the FBI, did they indicate that they would try to find Brian?
I really don't remember. I just remember talking about Gabby and, as a missing person, what the steps are and what they're going to be doing. And
during that phone call with the FBI at 3 a.m, did you talk about the Moab incident?
I don't believe so.
I think this is the last one. During the phone call with the FBI at 3 a.m, was the conversation more along the lines of, hey, Gabby may be missing because, she's hiking somewhere remote? Or it was more, something may have happened here and we're concerned?
Something may have happened and we're concerned.
When you became aware that Brian hadn't returned home with the van, when you became aware that Brian had returned home with the van and without Gabby, what, if any, thoughts or conclusions did you draw from that?
I didn't want to think the worst, but obviously as a mother, I thought, oh my God, something bad happened. He did something to her. But hopefully we're wrong and she ran off with some other camping group or something, or they had an argument and he left her there. Who knows? I was just hoping it wasn't my worst fear.
Around this point in time, where the FBI is getting involved, Are you still having, let me ask it differently. Around the time the FBI gets involved, are you starting to notice more social media and public interest in Gabby missing?
Yes.
You mentioned kind of sending out flyers on Facebook.
Uh-huh.
Yes?
Yes.
Were you engaged in trying to basically get the word out around this time? My daughter's missing. Does anyone have any information? Has anyone seen her?
Yes.
Was Joe also doing that?
Yes.
What were the different platforms or social media accounts? How are you getting the word out around this September 12th timeframe or September 11th timeframe?
I would say at that time it was mostly Facebook, maybe some Instagram. I didn't have a Twitter yet, so I don't remember when I created one.
Did you create a Twitter while Gabby was still missing?
I might have to try and get more people to see her missing flyer.
Were you starting to get responses of some of the social media posts you were putting out there?
Yes, thousands of people were sharing and commenting. And I know some people were offering tips. They thought they had seen her. They were always redirected to the FBI to let them know.
And it may have changed over time as you learned more information. But in any of the flyers or postings that you put on social media platforms, did any of them include Brian's image at first? And then you stopped? Or was it always just Gabby?
It was just Gabby because it was after I found out Brian was home. I believe the van was in one of the images as well. So just to see if people had seen the van, her in the van. I'm sorry. Let me backtrack.
Okay.
There was a picture with Brian because we were asking if people had seen them. So yes, there was a picture with Brian at first.
When you found out that Brian was home at some point with the van, did you update social media postings you were doing to say, hey, the van's been found? Has anyone seen Brian? Or
I believe I did, yeah.
what do you recall updating at that time?
I don't remember specifically. It was something along the lines of Brian and the van are safe or the van is home, but Gabby's still missing.
In your conversations with the FBI, I thought I was done. At 3 in the morning, did you ask them, are you guys going to talk to Brian and see what he says about all of this?
I don't remember.
In terms of who might have the most information about where Gabby was at that time, whether she was okay or not, were you thinking that Brian was the person who would know the answer to that?
I assumed Brian was probably the one person that knew what happened. It's always the last person that was with the person, right?
Sure. And in your mind, did Brian seem like the logical first person for any law enforcement agency to start with in terms of trying to piece together where Gabby may be?
Yes.
And was that something that you did speak about with law enforcement in kind of the early phase of, or them taking the case and starting to do their investigation?
I'm sure we spoke about that, yeah.
Were you ever told by anyone at the FBI or Detective Barry or anyone at Northport that they had attempted to speak with Brian and that Brian had refused to have that conversation?
I think they just mentioned that the parents, they only spoke to his parents and they handed over the card for the attorney.
That was at the well visit check on
Yes.
September 11th by the Northport police.
Uh-huh.
Yes?
Yes.
In terms of your first-hand knowledge of things, and by that I mean, like, you had the conversation yourself, or you saw the person, or you were at that place, as opposed to someone in law enforcement telling you about it later. Is it true that you had no idea that Brian had come home until this conversation with Detective Barry about the Northport police, where they said they, being the Northport police, thought he was at home at least on September 11th.
Correct.
As we're getting into the 12th and you're talking with the FBI, do you have some expectation that someone in law enforcement is going to have some type of conversation with Brian or his parents to get more information about what happened?
Yes.
Is someone in law enforcement telling you that they're going to do that?
Probably Northport was telling us they were going to attempt to talk to the parents of or Brian. I think it was Brian before the parents.
After Detective Barry sharing the encounter where the parents hand an attorney card to the Northport police, are you ever made aware that there was another attempt to speak with the parents by enforcement and the parents refused again?
No.
At some point in time in this process, are you contacted about taking the public presence beyond just posting on Facebook to whether it's an interview or print or
Yes.
television? How does that start?
I don't remember which media outlet contacted us first, but they said they would like to have a press conference where we could hold up Gabby's poster and talk about her. And just so the public could see, more public could see what was going on and look for her. I don't know. I don't remember what date it was. It could have been like Monday or Tuesday, the 13th or 14th. I am not 100% sure.
Does the news organization contact you or Joe or both of you?
They were contacting both of us, but through our attorney, Rick.
Who's Rick?
Rick Stafford. He's a family friend, but was just helping us out in the beginning.
Prior to Rick becoming involved with your daughters being missing, had you ever used Rick as a lawyer before?
No.
And who was he friendly with in the family?
So our daughters are best friends.
Where is Rick's law practice located?
He just moved his office. I'm not 100% sure where his new office is. It was in Bohemia, New York. It's in New York, though.
At some point in time, do you reach out to basically engage with Mr. Stafford to provide legal services relating to Gabby's disappearance?
I believe I called him to ask him some questions, and he asked if we needed help, and he came over and just kind of really helped us a lot.
In terms of how he helped, were any news outlets or people who were interested in wanting to interview you or speak with you or your husband about Gabby's disappearance, were they directed to go through Rick?
Yes.
To your knowledge, was law enforcement also interacting with Rick?
I don't think so.
To your knowledge, was Rick made aware that the Laundries had this attorney whose card was given to the Northport police?
Yes.
At what point in time did you first learn who the Laundries attorney was?
I don't remember. I believe it was like when he was on TV or he made a statement.
Do you remember which one that was? Whether you saw the Laundries attorney on TV versus you?
It had to be September 14th was the statement about them offering, we hope that, they get reunited and such. So September 14th was probably the first time I learned about who he was.
At that time, did you come to find out that Mr. Bertolino was the Laundries attorney?
Yes.
Had you ever known or met or interacted with Mr. Bertolino before that time?
No.
To your knowledge, had Joe Petito had any prior history or involvement with Mr. Bertolino before September 14th, 2021?
No.
No, he did not?
No, he did not.
Had you already engaged Mr. Stafford before you learned about Mr. Bertolino?
He was helping us, yes, but we didn't have like a contract signed or anything like that.
I'm going to rephrase it.
Okay.
Had you already enlisted the help and services of Mr. Stafford before you found out who Mr. Bertolino was?
I guess, yes.
In any of the interviews that you had with the media on the 12th or 13th of September 2021, did any part of those interviews ever involve that neither Brian nor his parents were talking about what may have happened?
I believe so. I think we mentioned that.
Were those questions that you might receive from the interviewer saying, have you spoken to the parents? Have you spoken to Brian?
Probably.
As we get to the 12th and the 13th of September 2021, are you becoming frustrated, for the lack of a better word, that you cannot get information from either Brian or his parents?
Of course.
Through that time, was your general belief that if anyone knew what had happened or where Gabby was, it would be Brian, or at least he would be the best starting point for that?
Yes, agreed.
Were, to your knowledge, Brian's parents on the big road trip at all at any point in time?
No.
As we're at September 12th or September 13th, 2021, was it your belief that whatever had happened, Brian had likely shared some or all of what occurred with his parents?
I believed that, yes,
Why did you think that?
because they weren't speaking.
Was it literally that their silence gave you the belief that Brian must have told them something?
Yes.
To your knowledge, as part of giving the interviews with the news media, do you know if the news media had reached out directly to Brian or his parents for comment?
I don't know.
In any of your interviews, did any of the news people you interacted with say, "Hey, we've tried to call them and ask them for a comment, and they're not responding to us either"?
They may have. I honestly don't. I don't know the specifics. So I'm not going to say something I don't remember. So
To your knowledge, did Mr. Stafford ever give any of the news media Mr. Bertolino's contact information so that if they had questions, they could direct them to Mr. Bertolino?
oh, I'm not sure.
Did you ever share any of Mr. Bertolino's contact information either online or with the media or anything else?
No.
As we're going through the 12th and the 13th of September 2021, are you having any follow up with Detective Barry or Northport or someone not at the FBI?
I do remember speaking to Northport a couple of times. I don't remember the specific dates.
Did Detective Barry ever tell you that she had spoken with Mr. Bertolino?
No.
What do you recall, if at all, of any conversations with Northport around the 12th or the 13th of September?
I just know they asked us to be careful with the media, not to put too much out there. I think it was because they were talking to the media every second. They just reiterated that they had no contact with Brian and that they were keeping an eye on things, stuff like that.
On the 12th or 13th of September of 2021, did you have a sense from talking with the Northport police that they were actively investigating what may have happened to Gabby?
Sort of. It was like they were trying to figure out what was going on. So yeah.
In your conversations with Northport police on September 12th or 13th, did you discuss with them that Gabby's not contacting me at this point for now a couple of weeks plus? Brian coming back home with the van, and no one's able to find or hear from Gabby. It made Brian look very suspicious that he may have been involved with something with Gabby that was the reason why she couldn't be found.
I'm sure we talked about him being a suspect, but I don't remember specific words.
Did you get some assurance, for lack of a better term, from the Northport police that they were looking into Brian as a potential suspect or cause of Gabby's disappearance?
They said they were, but I didn't see it in their actions much.
By the 12th and the 13th, did you get the sense that the FBI was looking into Brian as a potential suspect or cause of Gabby's disappearance?
Yes.
What about your interactions with the FBI gave you that impression?
Just, I guess they asked a lot of questions about the phone records and stuff. It just seemed like they were trying to dig a little deeper than the Northport police.
With respect to phone records, did you get a sense that the FBI was trying to actually go out and get evidence or clues as to what may have happened to Gabby?
Correct, yes.
In your communications with the FBI on the 12th and the 13th, did you get a sense that that involved looking at phone records involving Brian or his parents?
I don't remember specifically. I don't recall.
Do you recall what phone records the FBI were talking about?
They definitely wanted to see Gabby's phone records and hers, probably the interactions with Brian and us, you know, just her family and friends.
Either with the Northport Police or Detective Barry or the FBI, and now we're basically through September 13th, 2021. Did you ever ask any of them, how is it that Brian could just not say anything? Like, how could that be?
I'm sure I did. I don't remember specifically, but
Did you ever get an explanation for that?
I don't remember.
Do you recall ever having a conversation with someone in law enforcement around this time frame, the 12th or the 13th of September, where you asked, can you arrest him? Can you bring him in for questioning? Did you ever use those terms?
I probably did, yes.
Do you recall what the response was?
Not specifically. Probably something along the lines of they needed to investigate it first. They didn't have enough evidence.
Was your general impression or understanding, though, from those exchanges, that the FBI and law enforcement were investigating Brian to see if they could develop that evidence?
Yes.
As we're at this point in time, September 12th and 13th, understanding that you were told by law enforcement that Brian had returned home, knowing that,
La
when law
la
enforcement
la la
attempted to
la. You
speak
don't
with
hold a
Brian's
count.
parents, they handed law enforcement a card for their lawyer. Had you formed the belief that if Brian had done something wrong, his parents were either protecting him or helping him in some way?
Yes. I believed that.
Why did you believe that?
Well, I, as a parent, I would have been concerned about my future daughter in law. So I would have probably tried to help rather than stay quiet.
It was that lack of help and the silence from Brian's parents that made you feel they either knew something or were part of whatever was happening now, covering it up or hiding Brian or something.
Of course, I didn't know specifically, but yeah, I was concerned that they knew something had happened or information they didn't want to share.
As we're at September 12th and 13th, had you formed some belief that you may not see Gabby again?
Of course, my mind went there, but I tried to believe that I was wrong. I had a feeling something bad happened.
The feeling that something bad happened, was it a combination of how much time had passed since you had last heard from Gabby and Brian, and his parents were not saying anything about it?
Yes.
As days passed, did your frustration with Brian's parents not saying anything about what they may have known, did it grow, or was it already at its peak when you found out that Brian came home and they weren't talking?
I don't think you can measure frustration. So I was just angry, and it was pretty continuous.
Did you have any conversations with law enforcement about, separate and apart from when, or whether they may bring in Brian to question him. Were they going to have an opportunity or planning on questioning the parents?
I don't remember the conversations. I remember somebody, maybe from Northport, saying they wanted to try and question Brian, but they just couldn't.
Did you have any conversations with the FBI or Detective Barry or Northport at this time frame? This is like September 12th and 13th time frame. Hey, if he's staying at his parents', if they're harboring him, for lack of a better term, and they're not saying anything, is that a problem for them? Did you ask those types of questions?
I'm sure I did, yeah.
Did you suggest to law enforcement on the 12th and 13th that Brian's parents may be hiding something or helping him hide what happened?
I definitely had those conversations. I just don't remember specifically with whom or about.
But you definitely would have had those conversations with someone in law enforcement.
Yeah, I think I use those words. Somebody knows something, or why are they not talking? They have to know something.
So, as we kind of roll into September 14th, 2021, the FBI is giving you indication that they're performing an investigation. Is that fair?
Yes,
Northport is telling you that they're performing an investigation, although they're not necessarily seeing a lot of what they're doing. Is that right?
correct. Uh-huh.
And was Detective Barry still involved?
I'm not 100% sure. I think she was probably being told information along the way, but she wasn't on the forefront of the investigation.
As we get into September 14th, 2021, are you and or with Joe or on your own continuing to get media inquiries passed through Mr. Stafford about interviews and how can we get Gabby's name out there?
Yes.
As we get into September 14th, 2021, are you and or with Joe or own continuing to get media inquiries passed through Mr. Stafford about interviews and how we can get Gabby's name out there?
Yes.
Do you recall ever having an interview with a media person around this time in which they didn't bring up Brian or Brian's parents?
I don't remember.
And I asked that because in telling the story, definitionally, we have to say, she went on this road trip with Brian. And then when you're giving media interviews on like the 13th or the 14th, we know the van's back at the parents' house.
Yes.
And
I'm sure that most of them asked about the parents and stuff, but I just don't remember.
to the extent you would have been asked about the parents in interviews on the 13th or the 14th of September, do you recall, first off, whether or not part of that discussion was, we've tried to reach out to them and they're not telling us anything? Was that discussed during interviews?
We always said with the text that we reached out. I texted and I got no response. And it looked like I was blocked because you can tell on an iPhone. So that's the same thing I told all of them.
Did you also tell the media outlets that the van was found at the parents' house?
I think they all knew at that point. I don't remember when that information became public, but.
And still through the 14th? Had you had any direct communications with Brian's parents?
No.
You mentioned a short time ago that at some point in time on September 14th, you became aware of Mr. Bertolino because a statement that he had issued. Is that fair?
Yes.
How did you learn of that statement?
I don't remember if I'd seen it first or if somebody texted me, hey, check it out. Like, I just remember seeing it that day, like on my computer.
Okay. What I'll do.
Like reading it, I think the only text I sent out was, hey, the lawyer put out a statement to my friend Flora. I think the lawyer put out a statement.
Hang on 1 second while I look for my stickers that I think I just buried under this pile of paper. What we're going to do, Miss Schmidt, there's like a collection of texts. I promise you we're not going to look at every single one. We might look at half a dozen or so. It's going to be Exhibit 1 to your deposition. And while we take a short break, we're definitely going to need to have a lunch break at some point, so it won't be long, I promise.
But how long? Like, how long after that?
I don't know what Mr. Luca has. Like, if I was going to... I'm at least halfway through, maybe even more than that.
Okay.
You know, in terms of kind of our story, so...
Okay. That concludes part 3 of Nichole Schmidt's deposition. We will be releasing the rest next week, so be looking for a Monday, Wednesday, Friday routine. It is a lot to read, so please bear with us. Thank you for listening. Make sure you hit that like button, and I'll see you in the next video. Be sure to check out my other videos and playlists for more true crime content. And if that's not enough, you can join our Patreon. Don't have a tinfoil hat? It's okay. We'll make you one. It's that easy. See you guys in the next video.
See you later. Bye.